What's up, everyone? This is Elliott Connie, and for over 15 years, I've helped tens of thousands of counselors support their clients in finding solutions for their everyday lives, and worked with tens of thousands of clients on my own. And today I want to welcome you back to the aha moments where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. And today I want to talk to you about one of the most important lessons I've learned in my work, and that is about leadership. One of my personal heroes around, throughout history and around the world is Nelson Mandela. And multiple times my work has taken me to South Africa, where I've had the opportunity to visit places that are really significant in the life and achievements of Nelson Mandela. I've been to his home. I've been to 2 prisons where he spent time, Robben Island and Pollsmoor Prison. I've been to the farm where he hid from the authorities when he was on the run and he adopted a name, David. And I have also had the opportunity to visit what they call the capture site. And this is a place just outside of Durban where he was arrested and taken into custody before he was put on trial on that fateful day. And when I was visiting the capture site, I had a chance to get a book. Now, I thought I had read everything that there is to read about Nelson Mandela, and I thought I had seen everything there is to see in terms of the movies and documentaries and docuseries about Mandela's life. But I saw this book that I had never seen before. It was a book written by a man who spent a year with Mandela helping him write his autobiography. And he said he got really close to Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela became the godfather to his children. This guy became really close. I don't remember the title of the book, but the premise of the book is the 10 things I learned from being with Madiba in South Africa. They refer to him as Madiba. 10 things I learned from being with Madiba for a year. And one of the things that they talked about in that book was qualities of a good leader. And Mandela really took leadership. It was a really important thing to him. He really took leadership seriously. And in the book, he talked about a really good leader. I remember one chapter said, a really good leader listens to the followers. And he talked about how he really had to lead the South Africans, and he had to take the opinion of the South Africans into account. And as he was making his decisions, once he was the president of the country of South Africa. A really famous example is they restructured the entire country. They rewrote the constitution of the country. They established a new flag of the country. They even changed the name of the country. But one thing they did not change is the logo of the national team, because the Springboks was a really meaningful thing to the South Africans. The white South Africans didn't want to change the name of the national team. The national team was associated with oppression. They often didn't let Black people play on the national team, but Mandela listened to his audience and allowed them to keep the name. And to this very day, the national team in South Africa are known as the Springboks. But then in the next chapter, he said, you sometimes have to stand against the audience. And he mentioned how if he had asked the Black South Africans what they wanted when he got out of prison, they would have told him they want civil war. And Mandela knew that more bloodshed would not lead to freedom in his country. So he had to tell them what they didn't want to hear and get them to follow them. Because to Mandela, a leader has to know the difference between when it's time to listen to your followers and when it's time to stand strong and instruct them. I think a leader has to be wise to know the difference between those two things and be strong enough to at times put his ego aside, at times put her ego aside, and at other times put his or her ego and stand up and be strong and say, we're going to do this thing and be like a force. And good leadership gets the audience to buy in to the future that they're trying to create. And then everybody gets on the same page about what we're trying to accomplish. And to me, that is the most important facet of good leadership. And Nelson Mandela was probably the greatest example of good leadership that we have ever seen. So I want you to think about, what are some good examples of leadership that you have seen? And what traits do you see in those leaders that stand out to you that perhaps you could practice and adopt yourself? Hey, thanks for being here today. Everybody needs to be a good leader, whether you're leading your family, employees, an athletic team, Leadership is really important, so please do me a huge favor and share this message with at least one person that you think could benefit from hearing this message today. And don't forget to head on over to Apple Podcasts where you can rate, leave feedback, and subscribe to this podcast. In fact, subscribe wherever it is you listen to your podcast, and I will see you tomorrow. What's up, everyone? This is Elliott Connie. And for over 15 years, I've worked with hundreds of thousands of counselors to support their clients in finding solutions for their everyday lives, and worked with tens of thousands of clients on my own. And today I want to welcome you back to the aha moments where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. And today I want to continue talking to you about leadership and how important it is for children to observe a good leader and for children to see leadership in their lives, because it makes children feel safe, secure, and it gives them a place to learn. I think probably the very first leader I can remember observing in my life was my baseball coach. His name was Coach P, is what we called him. His name was Peter Pascarosa, but we called him Coach P. And Coach P, the way that I saw him lead was in a very selfless, act of service kind of way, right? And I'll never forget, I was probably 13 when I first started playing for Coach P. I actually played football for Coach P and then eventually baseball, which was his primary role in my life and primary function at the school. And one day I got to practice early, like very, very early. It was a Saturday and we were supposed to practice at like noon or something. And for whatever reason, I got there at like 10:30. And what I saw Coach P doing when I arrived at the baseball field was mowing the lawn. So here it is, a hot summer day, and Coach P is like push mowing the entire baseball field. And I watched it like an hour or two, even more, before the rest of the team was going to show up. And I watched him do this. And when he got done doing it, I asked him, like, how often does he do that? And he said he takes care of the lawn on his own. And I asked him, why didn't he let the crew at the school mow the lawn? And he said, because they're very busy and sometimes they don't have time to do it. So I just took it over because I want to make sure you guys have a well-groomed field. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but like a well-groomed baseball field is really important because as the ball is hit, sometimes it bounces. And if it hits long grass or a clump of dirt or whatever, it'll ricochet and go crazy ways. We need to have like predictable bounces on the way the ball is going to like skip across the ground. And Coach P would be the person to ensure that our field was taken care of. And I remember thinking about leadership when this happened. And like I said, I was probably 12 or 13 when this happened. But I absolutely remember thinking, a good leader does what's necessary for their team. And I remember Coach P doing lots of things to ensure that the players that played for him were in a better position in their lives for having doing so. He was selfless and he demonstrated his leadership and his care through acts of service like that were very much so that he could improve the way that we performed our tasks. That was a really important lesson for me because leadership is very, very important. And in these days, leadership is an important part of my life. I'm very much a leader in the field of psychotherapy, and I'm very much a leader in the company where I have 10 employees, maybe whatever our company size is. But it's important that I lead them. It's important that they know that they're working with someone who's in service to them. If you follow me, if you're a psychotherapist and you follow me, I will often remark about how I feel like I'm in service to my audience to help them become better and stronger as clinicians. And that's not just lip service. I absolutely 100% positively and powerfully believe that, because a good leader does what they have to do to elicit the very best of their team. And I started to learn that lesson as a 12 or 13-year-old kid watching Coach P do all kinds of things so that he could elicit the very best from his team, including hard, laborious work of pushing a push mower across an entire baseball field. I'm so glad and so pleased that I learned those lessons early on in my life, because here I am now, like a full-grown adult at the age of 45, still benefiting from the lessons I learned all of those years ago. So I want to challenge you guys. I want to ask you guys to think about who you looked up to as a child. What individual had an impact on you and how you began to learn about leadership? Because it's so interesting and wonderful to think about those early influences and the way that they still play a role in our lives. Thanks so much for being here today. Please, please, please share this podcast with at least one person that you think could benefit from hearing this message today. Share this on your social media pages. Share this with people. That would just mean the world to me. And don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, where you can rate and also leave feedback. In fact, do that wherever you listen to your podcast, and I will see you tomorrow. What's up, everyone? This is Elliott Connie, and for over 15 years, I've helped hundreds of thousands of counselors support their clients in finding solutions for their everyday lives, and worked with tens of thousands of clients on my own. And today I want to welcome you back to the aha moments, where every day I share the lessons I learned in my work and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. And today I want to talk to you about leadership, but share what I think is the most important lesson about leadership that I have ever learned. I think for me, one of the biggest lessons that I learned that was actually negative and not good was from my dad. My father conveyed the message that good leaders are like mean and harsh and didn't care what people thought of them and were cruel. And you kind of take that on, like as a young kid, like your dad is kind of like your window into the world, and you just assume everything that you're hearing makes sense. And leadership does require to make hard decisions, and leadership does require to have hard conversations. And honestly, I came away from those interactions with my father thinking that that was true, and that was like the basis of good leadership is being strong. And the greatest demonstration of strength is meanness, and like your ability to do hard and harsh things, and your ability to push through regardless of what people thought about it. Like that. That's what I thought. And I think it's what people think when they think of as good leaders. Like you think of the sports coach yelling at the players and grabbing them and shaking them. But the biggest lesson I want to give people about leadership, and the biggest thing I want people to observe me as a leader, is you can lead with kindness. I think it takes more strength to lead with kindness than it does to lead with harshness. And I have a team of people. I'm the leader in my company. And I want all of them to say that Elliott is kind to us. Elliott is dedicated to us. Elliott believes in us, and Elliott conveys those things to us. I also think I want them to know that I'm, perfectly capable of making hard decisions and having hard conversations. But I definitely want to be able to convey to my team that they matter to me, because they do. My team is working really, really hard to make my professional dreams come true. The work of my team has changed my life professionally, financially. They've changed my life in every way that I could possibly imagine. So I want to change theirs. Since they're working so hard to make my dreams come true, I feel like I owe them nothing less than to work for them to make this their dream job, to make this their dream employment opportunity, and for me to work to make their professional dreams come true as well. I think that is what a good leader does, is demonstrate reciprocation. Since you are working very hard for me, then I owe it to you that I work equally as hard. And that really, honestly, that's the biggest lesson that I could give people. You don't have to be a jerk to be a good leader. In fact, it requires more strength to lead with care than it does to lead with fear. I can remember my father overtly telling me that no good leader is effective unless they can invoke fear in the people that are following them. And my father successfully did that. Like, people fear him. But I wouldn't consider my father to be a good leader. I wouldn't consider my father to be someone that people would follow joyously. And I wouldn't consider my father to be someone that makes dreams come true or is living a happy life. But I want people to look at me and think, gosh, that guy's living a happy life. And a good leader is someone that people would want to emulate. And I would love for people to look at me and think, I would like to emulate who and what Elliott is like as a person. I would like to emulate who and what Elliott is to his team. I would like to emulate who and what Elliott is, or certainly trying to be, because that is good leadership, is recognizing that I can be kind in my leadership and the people around me and the people on my team, I owe them nothing less than to work just as hard to make their dreams come true as they're working to make mine come true. So if you want to be a good leader, I want you to find examples and opportunities to be kind in your leadership, in your home, in your community, at your school, in your church, wherever it is, and watch the impact you have on people's lives. Thanks so much for being here today. Please share this podcast on your social media platforms or with at least one person that you think could benefit from this message today. That would mean so much to me. And don't forget to head on over to Apple Podcasts where you can subscribe, rate, and leave feedback for this podcast. In fact, do that anywhere you listen to your podcast, and I will see you tomorrow. What's up, everyone? This is Elliott Connie. And for over 15 years, I've helped hundreds of thousands of counselors support their clients in finding solutions for their everyday lives. And I've worked with thousands of clients on my own. And today I want to welcome you back to the aha moments where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. And today I want to talk to you about leadership and a bit of a warning, a bit of a cautionary tale, if you will, because leadership is important. We've been talking about leadership kind of all week this week here on the podcast. And I want to talk about an aspect of leadership that I think is important that we cover. And that is how you have to be careful about blindly following leadership. So I live in Texas now. And right before I moved to Texas, I was super scared to move to Texas because right before I moved to Texas, there was a standoff between this group called the Branch Davidians that were led by a man named David Koresh in Waco, Texas. And it became kind of like a global phenomenon. I don't know if you guys remember it or not, but it was in like the mid-90s where all of these people in Waco, Texas were in this compound and they had all these weapons. And the United States government kind of went in there to keep it safe because all the weapons stash that this group had. And it ended really deadly and everybody died and like it was just a horrible thing. A lot of those people just blindly followed David Koresh into a very dangerous, difficult circumstance. And they brought their spouses and they brought their children, and almost all of them perished. But an even more recent example, like one of the days that I will never forget is January 6th, 2021. Like I'll never forget, I was in a staff meeting on Zoom and I kind of look over my shoulder and I'm watching this unbelievable press conference with the then President Donald Trump telling people to go to the Capitol building to disrupt the election results being, sanctioned or certified or whatever. And he was instructing, he's saying, like, go down there and break into the building and I'll follow you and I'll be there with you. And I remember seeing that and thinking, that's a strange request coming from the President of the United States. And I remember thinking, like, I wonder what's going to happen next. And then people, of course, did. And then the news reports, like people were breaking in, they're going through barriers and they're breaking windows and climbing through windows, beating Capitol police officers. People were dying, all because this particular president was saying the election was stolen and go down there and do these things. And he was saying the election was stolen with no data to back that claim up, but yet just the power of his personality and the power of his position was just instructing people to do this. And they went down there and committed serious acts of vandalism, serious acts of violence. Now we're a year later, and many of those people have been sentenced to prison time. Many of those people have been sentenced to do like real prison time and been convicted of very serious crimes. And a lot of them are saying how much they regret following that leadership. A lot of them are saying how much they regret blindly listening to what was being fed to them. And sometimes when you have a leader, you also have to listen to their message and process how accurate it might be and how good for you it might be to follow that leadership. I think in regards to the January 6th incident, most of these people are actually saying how much they regret that they did not analyze the accuracy of the message they were getting or analyze whether or not it was good for them to follow that leadership in that way. And a lot of them are paying for that mistake with years in prison. So just remember that just because a leader is saying it doesn't mean that they're above scrutiny. Like, we should always scrutinize what we're hearing from our leaders and make sure that the things they're asking us to do are good for us and good for who we want to be. So I want you to think about that as you are following the leaders that you follow. That if somebody's telling you something that is too good to be true, not backed up by data, if someone's asking you to do something that puts you at risk in a way that is not good for you, it is okay to not follow that leadership. Thanks so much for being here today. Please do me a huge favor and head on over to social media and share this podcast with your followers, with your friends, with anybody you think that could benefit from hearing this message today. And also don't forget to head on over to Apple Podcasts, where you can subscribe to this podcast. You can rate it. You can leave feedback. In fact, do that wherever you listen to your podcast, and I will see you tomorrow. What's up, everyone? This is Elliott Connie, and for over 15 years, I've helped thousands of counselors support their clients in finding solutions in their everyday lives, and worked with thousands of clients on my own. And today I want to welcome you back to the aha moments, where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work, in my life, to inspire you to live your very best life. And today I want to talk to you about the leaders that have inspired me and the leaders that I look up to for leadership qualities that I think are amazing. And the first one I want to talk about is a civil rights leader that you can find on social media. Most of you have probably seen his posts and seen his comments and seen his videos and seen the work that he does. And that is a man named Shaun King. Now, what makes Shaun King such a remarkable leader, in my opinion, and such a remarkable leader to me, is there have been many, many times where someone has caught something on video. They've caught a crime, they've caught abuse, they've caught police shooting an unarmed black man, and Shaun King having a massive following. I have no idea how he got a mass following, but he has a mass following. And he would post on that following, does anybody know this person's name? Does anybody know this police officer's name? And he'll post a picture and say, does anybody recognize this person? And then 6 hours later, there would be retribution, and there would be consequences, and there would be an arrest made and a right being wronged. And that stuff is really important, because as an African-American male, I know that publicity has actually helped justice happen more so than it should. You know, when I think back to the Ahmaud Arbery situation, like now we're sitting here and the murderers of Ahmaud Arbery have been convicted and sentenced to life in prison. And that's justice. Like, when you take someone's life, you have to pay the consequences for having taken someone's life. But what I remember is when the murders first happened, one of the people who committed the crime was a former police officer, and he called a friend of his who happened to be the district attorney in that area. He was advised on what to say and what to do, and there were no arrests made for 82 days. This crime took place. It was video recorded. We had testimony from these men who were admitting to the crime that they committed, and for 82 days, there were no arrests made. If not for the publicity of how wrong this was, if not for the notoriety for how wrong this was, I'm not sure an arrest ever would have been made. And it makes me think about how many people have been murdered, assaulted, victims of serious crime where there was no accountability because there was no publicity before, social media was or is what it is today. And Shaun King, in the Ahmaud Arbery situation, was a huge driver of that publicity and was a significant person behind the scenes working to make sure that the spotlight was shined on this situation until justice was served. And he has had to pay a heavy consequence. Like, some of the leaders that I respect, I've told people often that Nelson Mandela is probably the person on this planet I respect the most that's ever lived. And if there's one person I could meet and have dinner with, it'd be Nelson Mandela. And one of the reasons why, because a quality that I respect in leadership is selflessness. And Nelson Mandela sacrificed a lot in his leadership in South Africa. And Shaun King has sacrificed a lot for his civil rights leadership today. Shaun King is often harassed by police, and there are people who think he is the exact opposite of a good person, and he's been attacked on social media. He's been attacked physically. I mean, he has had to pay a very heavy price for what he does. But as a black man, I know that justice would be harder achieved if not for the work of Sean King. And I know that there will be people who are doing very wrong things and committing very serious crimes towards innocent people, that if it wasn't for the work of Sean King and his team and people like him, that justice would just never be achieved. So somebody that I look at in today's world that I really admire in terms of their leadership and what they mean to the community and what they bring to our current world is Sean King. I think he's important. I think his work matters. We need to have more people that do selfless and tireless work towards a right and just cause. And Sean King is an example of that I totally respect. So I just said some of the qualities that I respect a lot in a leader is selflessness, working towards a right and just cause. So what about you? What are some of the qualities that you respect and that you value in a leader? And who are some of the leaders that you look up to in today's day and age? Let's just take some time to reflect and think about that. So thanks for being here today. If you wouldn't mind, please do me a huge favor and share this podcast with at least one person that you think could benefit from hearing this message today, and share this podcast on your social media pages. That would mean the world to me. And don't forget to subscribe to Apple Podcasts and rate this podcast, leave feedback for this podcast. In fact, do that wherever you consume your podcast, and I will see you on Monday.